And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special weekend edition of Australian Indian Radio's daily live Facebook stream, brought to you via Chentex Multimedia streaming service as well. It is the 9th day of October and a little bit smoky out here in Brisbane today, partly cloudy and partly sunny, 25 degrees currently outside, and it might get up to the 28 degrees later in the day. Well, right now, let's move on with the news for today. First of all, Brisbane's big welcome for the athletes. Take a look at what happened in King George Square. And the big welcome home celebrations. For the Queensland Olympians and Paralympians.
News.
And of course, it is an absolute pleasure to be here today to honour the incredible Olympic and Paralympic athletes who didn't they do us so proud in Tokyo. Now, Pat, you've covered, yeah, they did, and that deserves a round of applause, definitely. Pat, you've covered 9 Olympics in your time, but sadly you didn't get to Tokyo this year. But this has got to be the next best thing, doesn't it? I mean, to be here, to see the atmosphere, to feel the atmosphere, and to be in the company of such an impressive array of Olympic athletes.
Well, in all the Olympics that I've covered, Sharon, I mean, this was obviously the most difficult. We sent a limited team over there. We had a lot of our teams based here. But the simple fact, in TV terms, I suppose, that virtually everything unfolded in prime time, which made it one of the most watched events in Australian history. And I know every one of you here today that have come up under the hot sun enjoyed every minute of it. And we've got, I think you don't need convincing that so many of our stars of the Games were, of course, Queenslanders. And I've had a little sneak peek. We've seen so many of them gathering inside the cool of City Hall now. And they just can't wait to come out and meet you. And we'll be bringing them to you very, very shortly.
And Pat, Queensland did a fair bit of the heavy lifting during these Olympics and Paralympics. Some statistics for you. We won 56 medals in total. 22 of those medals were gold, yes, round of applause. Australia, of course, finished 6th on the overall medal tally. If Queensland had have been competing as a country, we would have finished 7th. So, yes, they did us proud, did they not? Well done, Queensland athletes.
Just a little bit of housekeeping. Please, as best you can, maintain physical distancing today. We'd really appreciate that. Keep that mask on. That is absolutely crucial, obviously, unless you're seated and eating and drinking.
Of course, if you wish to exit that zone that you are in, there is only one exit towards the rear, so please be aware of that. Also, if by chance any of you feel unwell, there is a first aid tent here, so please make your way to that.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today, of elders past, present and emerging. We thank them.
We'd also like to acknowledge the Honourable Anastasia Palaszczuk MP, Premier of Queensland, and the newly appointed Minister for Olympics, the Right Honourable the Lord Mayor of Brisbane, Councillor Adrian Schrinner, Susie O'Neill AM, representing the Australian Olympic Committee.
You might notice Susie over there standing beside another legend, Dawn Fraser. Dawny, welcome, great to see you. Could I particularly mention the Honourable Tim Carmody, QC, Board Member, Paralympics Australia, Members of Parliament who are gathered here as well, councillors, athletes, team officials, and in particular on a day like today, you, our fans. Thank you all for being here.
Yeah, the fans do deserve a round of applause for standing in the sun there, Paddy, don't they? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here this afternoon. It is heartening to see such an impressive number of you out here today celebrating the outstanding achievements of our athletes that were made in Tokyo 2020 for the Olympic and Paralympic Games.
Well, I don't think there's any better way to start the celebrations than to recap the phenomenal achievements that our athletes achieved during the Games this year. Please now turn to the big screens as we recall some of the inspiring performances from the Olympic Games.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is coming live from King George Square, the event that took place there. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to this very special segment. Right now we will be going back to King George Square to see how the proceedings are going.
It was just incredible, wasn't it? It melted away all the world's troubles when we were watching the Olympics and the Paralympics. Fantastic. Well, now for the remarkable Paralympians, please join us in celebrating the incredible triumphs and the sportsmanship on show during the Paralympic Games in August.
1, 2, 3. Very good.
Australia's having another mining boom. It's a bit of a gold rush.
Kelsey Lee Barber got the bronze in javelin, and Peter Bowl and Matt Denny, weren't they inspiring? And who could possibly forget Ash Maloney winning bronze in the decathlon with his mate Cedric Dubler urging him on in the final event of the 1500 metres. The para-athletics, it's comprised of track and field events and is open to athletes with a physical, intellectual or vision impairment. Please welcome our athletic and para-athletic Olympians and Paralympians.
And what about our beach volleyballs? They're always ahead of the game. They're already here. One of the most memorable moments of the Games. So Taliqua Clancy, ladies and gentlemen, and Maria Fayataccio del Solar claimed the silver medal, just pipped by the US in the final following a stellar performance in the lead-up. They are our beach volleyballers.
Next up, we have the sport of boxing. Australia sent a team of 5 boxers to Tokyo, with Harry Garside winning our first boxing medal in 33 years. What an amazing performance that was. And of course, who could forget Sky Nicholson? She showed us just how much it means to represent Australia, and we can't wait to see them back for Paris.
What about our canoe and para-canoe teams, ladies and gentlemen? Our para-canoe is open to athletes with a physical impairment and races in 2 types of boats, the kayaks and bar. The races are individual events, and we've got a couple of stars there as well, ladies and gentlemen. And our canoe sprint paddlers are clearly the highlight of the team, with John van der Westhuizen and Tom Green bringing home the gold. This was the first time that Australia has taken home the gold in the men's K2 1000. Welcome them all.
Next up, we have our cyclists and paracyclists. And as you all know, Queensland does very well when it comes to cycling. And with paracycling, it is open to athletes with a physical or visual impairment. It's divided into track and road events. In road cycling, athletes compete on a tandem bike, a standard bike, a 3-wheel trike or a hand cycle, depending on their impairment.
Wonderful to see everyone there with that celebration, and of course we know that Queensland did very, very well
in the final to claim the silver. Welcome our hockey teams.
Our next sport, ladies and gentlemen, is rowing. And how could we forget Australian rowers? They had that incredible hour of power at Tokyo 2020. In the space of an hour on the morning of July 28.
And it is wonderful to see that, this kind of thing, the civic reception receives gets a bipartisan support, and of course the Premier and our Lord Mayor both coming together, joining hand in hand, for this celebration.
Tokyo. Thank you very much. Well, now that
the
we
Premier
have
would be coming up next.
Stage, I would now like to invite the Honourable Anastasia Palaszczuk MP, Premier of Queensland and Minister for Olympics, to come forward to say a few words.
Brisbane. Can I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we gather and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Can I of course acknowledge our co-host here today, the Lord Mayor Adrian Schrinner and the Matey Mayoress. Can I also acknowledge my Deputy Premier Stephen Miles, Treasurer Cameron Dick, my Minister for Sport Sterling Hinchcliffe, the mayors that are here, Greg Christensen, Peter Flannery. Can I acknowledge the Leader of the Opposition, the Tokyo Olympic Deputy Chefs de Mission, Susie O'Neill and Kenny Wallace. But most importantly, well, first of all, let's acknowledge our wonderful athletes. Let's give them a big cheer. Well done. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, today is a celebration. It's a celebration about acknowledging the achievements of these inspiring Queenslanders who went to Tokyo during the most difficult of times, and every single one of them has come back an Olympian hero. Let's give them a big cheer. We all
some Paralympians and then the Lord Mayor of the
these today, Pat and Sharon, to all of the distinguished guests, the Premier, Ministers, to all of the councillors, the mayors from South East Queensland, to the Leader of the Opposition, David Crisafulli, and most importantly, to our fantastic Olympic athletes and Paralympians. Ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing else that unites people like the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there seems to be a bit of a delay and lag in that transmission there. It was wonderful to see that participant support, as I always said, and it's a wonderful feeling, when you're there watching everyone join in that joyous celebration. Well, right now it's time to take a look at the COVID cases all around the country and see what's happening. First up, let's go to our capital, Canberra.
There have been no additional cases associated with the special care nursery exposure at the Centenary Hospital for Women and Children. Investigations into the source of the infection continue, but we have confirmed that 2 carers who have been visiting the unit have tested positive for COVID-19, which I think I mentioned yesterday. We've also confirmed that the team member who had tested positive had cared directly for the first baby that was identified as a case. The team member is fully vaccinated. Both babies are now being cared for in a paediatric COVID-19 ward. 5 other babies have been assessed as close contacts and are therefore now in quarantine. I acknowledge this is an incredibly challenging and stressful situation for their parents. Carers will be able to visit these infants after they return a negative test on day 5, which I understand today is day 4, and they'll be being tested today. Visitors, of course, will be required to wear appropriate PPE and follow infection prevention and control measures. There are currently 27 Canberra Health Services team members who are unable to work as they are in quarantine.
After that update from ICT, let's go to Victoria, which has recorded a high number of cases.
Emma Mackey was left hanging by the phone in agony, waiting for help.
I've never felt that kind of pain. I've had 3 children and that pain was excruciating.
After returning from hospital with suspected kidney stones, Miss Mackey's pain returned. Help arrived 5 hours after she called 000.
They just kept saying, someone's on their way.
The state's emergency call system is in crisis, exacerbated by COVID, with many patients facing long waits to even get through to an operator. At least 2 people died from heart attacks recently. In each case, calls for help to 000 weren't answered for 5 minutes.
It is an incredibly difficult time right now, and I don't want the community to feel that they're not going to get an ambulance if they need one.
Former top cop Graham Ashton has been called in to review emergency calls. Paramedics will also get a helping hand with 10 ADF personnel arriving on Monday to drive ambulances to non-emergencies.
I think the rubber band is pulled back as far as it can possibly go.
Ambulance delays are in part due to extra COVID protocols, including PPE, but hospitals often don't have anywhere to put patients.
Unless we fix those problems, we are not going to fix the demand on the ambulance.
Currently, there are 620 people in Victorian hospitals, 114 in ICU, with 76 people on a ventilator. More than 2/3 are unvaccinated.
It is a fundamental fact that Victorian hospitals were under significant pressure before COVID started. It is the situation also in all other states in Australia.
It's really important that we recognise the pressures on the hospital system and what vaccination will do.
Pressure is not only on the hospital system, the pressure is also on the Premier, who got caught out, coming from his car to give a press conference without having any masks. There he goes. And of course, we know that landed him with a fine, and he was caught on camera coming from his car to the press conference without any mask on. Well, right now, let's go to South Australia and take a look at the numbers and figures there.
We do have 2 new cases here in South Australia, and the first case is not of a concern because it's a woman that's arrived overseas and has been in our Medi hotel. She's in her 50s, and she had a couple of negative tests before this positive test, and it's possible that she is in fact a historic case, and the team are just doing some further investigation to confirm that, but it would still count towards a South Australian case if it hadn't been reported overseas. Now, we do have a second case, and unfortunately this is another freight driver. So this is a man in his 60s, and this particular freight driver resides in South Australia. This gives us 4 active cases in our state, and I'll give a little bit more information about the truck driver in a minute, but just to note that we've had over 6,000 COVID-19 tests yesterday. I'm very pleased to see that number starting to increase. It's around about 8,000 that we do need in our state to feel more confident that we don't have seeding, and a big thank you to anybody in Mount Gambier who's come forward and got tested because you've got symptoms, because obviously we have been concerned in that particular area. So in terms of this truck driver, he has been driving a truck between South Australia and New South Wales, and he was tested yesterday evening at Yamba, and that one's come back positive today. That was just before 9 p.m. Last night that he crossed into our state and was tested positive. But the other important bit of information was that he had actually had a test in New South Wales earlier that day, and it was negative, and our team has reached into New South Wales to confirm that.
And of course, moving on, all these the cases, and of course, looking at the long lockdowns that has been happening, what is it going to have? What sort of long-term impact is it going to have? Let's take a look.
Just first of all, obviously, what are your thoughts on the roadmap changes?
Yeah, well, for New South Wales, I guess they've seen cases come down steadily over the last few days, week or two. So I think there is some room to move, and it's very appropriate that they look at reopening and releasing some of the restrictions. I guess the pace of the release is the concern, and with lots of things reopening quickly, we're likely to see a lag between when the reopening occurs and the cases coming up, and then another lag between that then and when the hospitalisations and the deaths from that occur. So, yeah, I guess it's tricky, and there's a concern that it's a little bit too rapid, perhaps.
Yes, and particularly because of the increase in the gatherings, we're seeing some of those ones in homes double, and of course we saw what happened here in Melbourne as a result of some of those illegal grand final celebrations that were happening in homes and the resulting spike. Can we see that sort of thing potentially happening as a result of these increased in gatherings?
Yeah, I think so, and we do need to watch the case numbers perhaps a little less and watch the hospitalisations closely and the ICU numbers, and New South Wales already have a substantial number of people in hospital and a substantial strain on the health system. So when we see the reopening, we'll see likely a spike, well, almost certainly a spike in cases, and then hospitalisations come up after that. So but at the same time, I think we definitely do have to reopen, and New South Wales should be looking at reopening. I guess it's just the pace of the reopening that's the concern.
Sure, and
so not necessarily the opening, but the timing and the the pace at which the reopening is happening is what's going to be a bit of concern there. Well, right now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get a message from our sponsors.
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
And real estate is the world. Don't forget that every Wednesday we have Usha Chandra right here in the studios talking about real estate and giving us the full real estate update with an up-to-the-minute analysis of the situations, including the number of listings, auctions, private treaties, and property trends. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on this weekend edition, now it's time to go to our daily India report. With that, let's welcome Ankita.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you glimpses of the changing India and the growing engagement of the Indian diaspora with India. In our first story, India opens for charter flights bringing foreign tourists starting October 15th. India will open to all tourists starting November 15th.
Emerging from the scourge of COVID-19, India has decided to allow foreign tourists into the country. India will begin granting tourist visas to those travelling by chartered flights from October 15th and tourists coming by scheduled flights from November 15th. India's Home Ministry announced that restrictions placed on visa and international travel since March 2020 due to the coronavirus pandemic stand eased given the present overall pandemic situation. Foreign tourists entering India by scheduled flights from November 15, 2021 will need fresh tourist visas. All due protocols and norms relating to COVID-19 as notified by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare from time to time shall be adhered to by the foreign tourists and carriers bringing them to India as well as other stakeholders at landing stations. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, all visas granted to foreigners were suspended last year. After considering the evolving COVID-19 situation, foreigners were later on allowed to avail themselves of any kind of Indian visa other than a tourist visa for entry and stay in India. However, the Home Ministry had been receiving representations from several state governments as well as various stakeholders in the tourism sector to provide tourist visas, also to allow foreign tourists to come to India. Therefore, the Home Ministry consulted all major stakeholders like the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Ministry of External Affairs, Ministry of Civil Aviation, Ministry of Tourism and various state governments where foreign tourists are expected to arrive and took the decision.
The United Kingdom has removed restrictions on travellers from India starting 11th October. Fully vaccinated Indians with Covishield vaccine will not need to quarantine in the UK.
The British High Commissioner in India, Alex Ellis, said that Indians fully vaccinated with Covishield or any other UK-approved vaccine travelling to the UK will not have to undergo quarantine starting 11th October 2021. Ellis also thanked the Indian government for close cooperation over the last month to arrive at a standardized procedure for both governments to be able to check and ensure vaccination records. Earlier, the UK travel advisory had made 10-day quarantine mandatory for Indian travellers who had even received both doses of Covishield manufactured by the Serum Institute of India. After facing criticism from different quarters and India clamping reciprocal restrictions, the UK government has accommodated India-manufactured Covishield as an approved vaccine in the UK. Britain's Secretary of State for Transport, Grant Shapps, said that the measures announced now mark the next step as the UK continues to open up travel and provide stability for passengers and industry while remaining on track to keep travel open for good. As the UK has now eased the travel restrictions for vaccinated Indians to the UK, India may also take steps to reciprocate and ease the present restrictions imposed on UK travellers to India.
India's Bharat Biotech has sought approval for its corona vaccine for children below 18 years of age.
Bharat Biotech, India's indigenous vaccine manufacturer known for its Covaxin vaccine for COVID-19, will soon launch a corona vaccine for children. The company is seeking permission to roll out the vaccine to be administered to children under 18 years of age. Bharat Biotech successfully completed the second and third trials of this vaccine on 21st September 2021 and the trial was done on 1,000 children. The company says 2 doses of vaccine were administered at an interval of 28 days during the trial. The company has handed over the related data to the Central Drug Standard Control Organization. The company said that it has appealed for data verification and to sought permission for emergency use. Additionally, the second trial of the vaccine through the nose is in progress and will be completed by the end of October. If the vaccine is approved, then it will be the first Indian vaccine that can be administered to children.
Indian Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar says India and the United States think similar on big challenges of terrorism and pandemics.
Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar says India and the US share similar views on major global agenda. The evolving strategic bilateral relationship has gone well beyond general arguments and are now expressed as specific initiatives or programs and on the big challenges including terrorism, pandemics and climate change, said Jaishankar. He was speaking at the India Idea Summit organized by the US-India Business Council on 7th October. The Indian minister said the two biggest democracies share common goals and are able to coordinate actions. He said the 5 T's, tradition, technology, trade, trusteeship and talent, as described by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, are relevant to both Indo-US ties and the Quad. Citing examples of the alignment in thinking, he said the most pressing challenge, that of COVID, has been met through a Quad initiative that taps into the strengths of each of the participants. The climate action concern is addressed, amongst others, through the US-India Climate and Clean Energy Agenda 2030 partnership.
200 Chinese troops detained after entering Indian territory in Arunachal and let off following military talks.
Around 200 troops of China's People's Liberation Army entered into Indian territory last week, leading to a face-off with the Indian Army at the line of actual control in the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh. India and China have been engaged in border disputes for the last 16 months at the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. 12 rounds of commander-level talks have taken place so far for the disengagement, and the 13th round is scheduled to happen in mid-October. The recent face-off happened during a routine patrol close to the LAC near Yangtze in the Toang sector. The Indian troops intercepted around 200 PLA soldiers who had crossed over into the Indian side from Tibet and attempted to damage unoccupied bunkers. This led to a face-off which was amicably resolved by the commanders at the local level. They met to disengage and de-escalate the situation. Top government sources have said the face-off between the two sides lasted for a few hours and was resolved as per the existing protocols.
Pravasi Samman conferred on top India-born hotelier in the Maldives.
The prestigious Pravasi Samman 2021 was conferred on Salil Panigrahi, founder, Atmosphere Resorts, in acknowledgement of his pioneering work in the tourism industry in the Maldives. This is the first time that an Indian from the Maldives is being given the coveted award. The award was presented by Indian High Commission Charge d'Affaires Rohit Rathish on behalf of the President of India. The event was graced by Abdullah Shahid, President United Nations General Assembly and Foreign Minister of the Maldives. Tourism Minister of Maldives Dr. Abdullah Masoom was the guest of honor on the occasion. This marks a historic moment for the Indian community in the Maldives as the Pravasi Samman recognizes for the very first time the contribution of the 28,000 plus strong Indian diaspora in the development of the close India-Maldives partnership.
India is projecting its economy to grow at 9.5% in the current fiscal. The Reserve Bank of India's Monetary Policy Committee decided to maintain status quo on key policy rates to enable a good recovery from COVID-19. As India emerges from a catastrophic COVID-19, the Reserve Bank of India is projecting a gross domestic product growth target of 9.5% for the ongoing financial year of 2021-22. And to achieve the target, the 6-member Monetary Policy Committee of India's Central Bank on 8th October decided to maintain status quo on policy rates for the 8th consecutive time. RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das said the bank kept repo rate unchanged at 4% while maintaining an accommodative stance. The reverse repo rate also remained at 3.35% as widely expected. The announcement has come amid rising global commodity prices and the need to contain inflation at home. The projection for real GDP growth consists of 7.9% in Q2, 6.8% in Q3 and 6.1% in Q4 of 2021-22. Real GDP growth for Q1 of financial year 2022-23 is projected at 17.2%, RBI Governor said. The benchmark consumer price index inflation is projected at 5.3% for the financial year 2022. CPI inflation for Q1 for financial year 2022-23 is projected at 5.2%. The Indian share market has opened in green on 8th October. BSE Sensex has jumped 223.79 points to 59,901.62 in opening session and NSE Nifty advanced 77.75 points to 17,868.10. Bollywood stars Kriti Sanon and Rajkumar Rao exhibit fiery chemistry in the newly released teaser of their upcoming film Hum Do Hamare Do.
Bollywood's Medoc Films is known to blend brilliant stories with path-breaking content. This is evident in the teaser for their upcoming release Hum Do Hamare Do.
The teaser begins with Rajkumar Rao stuck in a pickle when Lady Love Kriti Sanon summons his parents to speak about their marriage.
What follows is a hilarious journey as our leading man may be forced to adopt a brand new set of parents. We also catch glimpses of the inimitable Paresh Rawal as well as the delightful Ratna Pathak Shah in the teaser. The teaser is the right mix of quirk and fun.
Besides the four, the film also stars Apar Shakti Khurana, Manu Rishi Chadda, Prachi Shah Pandya.
It is directed by Abhishek Jain. Hum Do Hamare Do starts streaming from the 29th of October on Disney Plus Hotstar.
That's all for this bulletin of Daily India Report. Thank you for watching.
And thank you very much, Ankita, for that report. Remember, the Daily India Report is brought to you by, produced by PIO TV for Australian Indian Radio, and it's brought to you from Tuesday through Saturday. Well, right now, let's take a look at what's coming in for next week. So next week, we have some very wonderful interviews coming up. So let's take a look at the first interview.
To stop the direction from being carried out by the employer.
Okay, when we look at so many people who have been, who took to the streets, and there had been some protests and everything. So, were they ill-founded or were they based on some grounds?
It's really sad, I think, to see some of the scenes coming in terms of the protesting. And I heard today that some police officers in Victoria who were trying to control the crowds were infected with coronavirus, and one's actually in ICU. And I think that's really, really sad that someone who's trying to do their job is exposed to that risk. I think it's unacceptable.
So that the interview is quite interesting, and it is with Giri Sivaraman of Morris Blackburn Solicitors, and we talk about COVID-19 vaccination. Can employers make it mandatory for employees? And the second one was a very topical issue of today, which is religious vilification and racial vilification.
The council that advises the Minister for Multicultural Affairs, where I argued on behalf of the council that better protections were needed, because there clearly are better protections, and I'm happy, Umesh, if you want me to explain what some of the gaps are, I'm happy to go into that.
Yes,
for you.
please. That would be wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, the best way I can describe it is this. Let's say, and this is maybe a little bit upsetting for your listeners, and I'm sorry, but if I'm walking on this, let's just say it's on Facebook. If someone was to call me a curry muncher, which is something that I've heard in my life, and I'm sure plenty of people listening to this show has heard, and then I was to call that person a thief, they would have better protection than me under the law. And they could bring action under defamation saying that I've defamed them because I've called them dishonest. Whereas I'd actually have pretty limited protection. If they sent it to me as a private message, if they were anonymous, I'd have no protection at all against what they've done. Yet why is what they've done to me any better than what I've done to them? In fact, I would say arguably it's worse, because if you
So again, quite a wonderful the interview there, and of course looking at quite a few different topics, and it will be a regular feature with Giri Sivaraman of Morris Blackburn. And of course this is not going to be a regular show, but it was wonderful to have Madhukarna right here in the studio. She does a radio program, but this interview we did a video of that as well, where she speaks to Dipti.
अराना हिल्स में आई थिंक 4-5 डेज में अराना हिल्स में प्रैक्टिस करती हूँ।
कभी कभी ऐसे देखा गया है कि अगर पति पत्नी एक ही व्यवसाय के अंदर हैं, जैसे मान ले दोनों डेंटिस्ट हैं या दोनों अध्यापक हैं, दोनों डॉक्टर हैं, तो उसमें कभी कभी ऐसे होता है कि उनमें विचारों का जो है आदान प्रदान या किसी तरह की आपस में वो कि आप उसको सहजता के साथ कर लेती हैं। मैं ये जानना चाहती हूँ।
नहीं, मैं कहूँगी कि इतना इजी नहीं होता, क्योंकि आप जहाँ पे दो लोग होते हैं वहाँ पे थोड़ा कई बार होता है कि कुछ फ्रिक्शन होता है, हर बार आपके आइडियाज़ आइडियोलॉजीज मैच नहीं करते हैं।
हाँ जी।
बट हम लोग कोशिश करते हैं कि जितने आप पॉजिटिव वे में जितने अच्छे तरीके से अपने आइडिया शेयर कर सको। बट मैं इसमें काफ़ी सारे पॉजिटिव एस्पेक्ट उसके होते हैं कि हम दोनों जहाँ एक जगह काम करते हैं तो हम दोनों की अलग अलग एक्सपर्टीज़ है, अलग अलग इंटरेस्ट है, तो वो कई बार बहुत अच्छी पॉजिटिव चीज़ भी होती है।
बहुत अच्छी बात है
जी।
तो अब जब आप यहाँ हैं तो मैं ये चाहूँगी कि आप हमारे ब्रिस्बेन के श्रोताओं को, जो भी कोई सुन रहा है, उन्हें ये ज़रूर बतलाएं कि हमें अपने दांतों का ख्याल कैसे रखना चाहिए।
जी, मैं तो बिल्कुल बिलीव करती हूँ कि जो भी चीज़ें होती है, प्रिवेंशन इज़ बेटर देन क्योर। तो एक बहुत बेसिक चीज़ है, शायद हम सबको ये चीज़ पता होती है, बट वही होता है कि कई बार पता होता है कि क्या अच्छी हैबिट्स होती है, बट हम सब करते नहीं हैं। तो बस वही होता है कि आपके दांतों की अच्छी हेल्थ के लिए, अच्छी ओरल हेल्थ के लिए डेफिनेटली मॉर्निंग एंड नाइट ब्रश करना ये बहुत ज़रूरी है। और फ्लॉसिंग, आप जब भी डेंटिस्ट के पास जाएंगे वो आपको फ्लॉसिंग पे एक लेक्चर देते होंगे, पर मुझे वही होता है कि फ्लॉसिंग से बड़ी कोई भी चीज़ नहीं है कि जो आप अगर आप नॉर्मली रेगुलरली फ्लॉस करते हैं, आप 2 बार ब्रश करते हैं, आप रेगुलर 6 मंथली चेकअप क्लीन करवाने जाते हैं, तो कोई रीज़न नहीं कि आपको कोई भी डेंटल प्रॉब्लम
यानी 2 बार ब्रश करना,
2 बार ब्रश करना,
2 बार फ्लॉसिंग।
आप फ्लॉसिंग 2 बार, अगर आप 1 बार भी करते हैं रात के समय ब्रश करने के पहले, तो वो भी काफी है।
तो 6 महीने में 1 बार,
6 महीने में 1 बार रेगुलर चेकअप, क्योंकि आप कितना भी केयर करें, कई बार होता है कि आपको कुछ चीज़ें, आप जो क्लीनिंग करते हैं, कई बार फिर भी प्लाक बिल्डअप होता है या कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स होते हैं, तो आप रेगुलर डेंटिस्ट के पास जाएंगे। तो अगर मान लीजिए कुछ भी चीज़ स्टार्ट हो रही है, आप रेगुलर क्लीन करवाते हैं, तो उससे जो कुछ भी प्रॉब्लम स्टार्ट हो रही है।
So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll leave that the interview there. It is quite an interesting one as well. So, this is quite a few things coming up on the channel. And I'll tell you what, last week has been a very, very busy week in the studios here because we have so many interviews, so many people coming in, and just so much that's been happening. And we've also done a live coverage from Sri Venkateswara Durga Temple. And tonight will be the interfaith musical concert, but it will not be a live stream, but a live coverage which we will put together as a show and bring to you maybe through one of our Music Junction programs as well. And there's some new programs which are coming up as well very soon, so stay tuned. Keep an eye out on what's happening right here on this channel, on our Facebook Live channel, and of course on our online radio channel there as well. So ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the rest of the weekend. If you're going out to functions and events, do take care. Observe the rules. We know that restrictions have eased a little bit, but the COVID-19 is not gone. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's around there. So please take care, exercise care, and we'll see you back on Monday. Until then, it's goodbye from me.